Hey there, Prairie Plant Girl here. It's March, beginning of March, and you know what that means? It's time to plant our anemones and ranunculus. So if you're like me and you're in a colder zone of the world, I'm in a zone, well, they say we're a zone 4 now. I'd still say it's a zone 3B. So I have to store my ranunculus and anemones indoors over winter and plant them in the spring. So I have to get them started early to get those beautiful early spring blooms before it gets too hot outside. If you live in zone 7, I believe it is, or warmer, then I think you can plant yours outside in the fall, right? But here, where it's a little bit too cold in the winter, we need to get ours tucked away safely inside over the winter and just get them pre-sprouted in the spring. So I'm going to show you how I do that, and we'll get some beautiful ranunculus and anemones started and sprouting so they're ready to go out before our last frost even happens. So the first thing I'm going to need is a couple of bowls and of course my corms. So I just went and pulled all of my buckets of corms and tubers and things out of storage yesterday. And they're sitting here. So this is begonias. They'll wait for a little bit longer. And then I have some gladiolus down here. But what I'm after is the ranunculus and anemones. So I have a couple of bags. So I'm going to pop these other things out of the way here. You can deal with both of these exactly the same. This one here is my ranunculus. So let's have a quick look. So that's a ranunculus. It kind of looks like an octopus or like a dahlia maybe, just on a much smaller scale. There's lots of little kind of legs coming out from around a main set there. Now this is 2 kind of stuck together, maybe even 3. Let me see if I can find one that's separated already. I do like to just leave them stored as a clump. So I just think they store nicer. And so here's one. So this is where the stalk or the plant was coming off of. It's just all this old growth up here. And then down here is where the tubers or corm, I think it's technically a corm for a ranunculus. But, so you can see all those little kind of legs hanging down there. So that's the ranunculus. And then the anemone almost looks like something you don't want to handle, or like a rock or something. Some of them will look really very much almost just like a stone, and some of them will look like they have more kind of growths out the sides like this. Let's see if I can see one that's a little more like this one here. It's not the healthiest looking one. It's kind of an odd color, so I'm not sure it's actually that good, but you see the shape of it is almost just like a rock or a clump of dirt. It's gonna be easy to leave them behind and not know what you're looking at, but that's what it is. So up at the top here, that's where the flower and the leaves came out, and this flatter area here is where the bottom is. So all we need to do to get started is pretty simple for the first part. You just dump them in a dish. And I'm going to do that with both of these here. And I don't have mine separated by varieties. If you did, you want to make sure that you're putting them in separate dishes, if you want to know the varieties, with the tags in them. See, I could just put mine, because they're in mesh bags, I could just leave them in the mesh bags and dip them right in the water. And if you have yours stored in mesh bags and lots of varieties, that might be what you want to do, is just leave it in the bag and get a big bucket or a pail. I'm just carefully trying to get these last 2 are hooked in the mesh. But then you can have the variety, as long as the variety tag is in each bag, then you won't get them mixed up if you keep them in the bags in the water. But I just have mine all mixed up. I'm not too worried about the colors. I'm just excited to have spring, early spring blooms. Oh, this is really tangled in here. Come out, come out, come out. There, I think I got it. I'm going to be careful because I don't want to break off all these little legs. So there's a little bit of dirt still in some of these. That's okay, it won't hurt. I think there might be a tiny baby one up here. So let's see if we can get it out. Come out, come out. There. So now that I have them in their bowls, just like this, I'm just going to pour water over them. So I'm just going to, and this is just room temperature water. You don't want it to be cold and you don't want it to be hot. And they're going to soak in this water and plump up. And we'll see a pretty good difference in size. Not so much in the anemones, but in the ranunculus, you really see a change in how they look as far as being more plump and just larger and more like something that's going to grow and be viable. So that's all I'm going to do with the corms for hours. These are going to sit like this for 3 or 4 hours and just plump up and absorb that water. That's all there is to it. Some people say to keep a little bit of water dripping on them or to put a little bubbler in them to keep some oxygenation going in the water. I just come along once in a while, every half an hour or so, and just jiggle the water around a little bit. I don't even know if that's even necessary, but I'm certainly not going to leave a tap running for 3 to 4 hours just to keep some oxygen in the water here. They've been sitting dry for months. I'm sure they'll be fine for a little bit like this. So that's all I need to do with those. I've just pushed them out of my way. Now, while we're waiting, though it won't take 3 to 4 hours, we're going to prepare some trays for them. So let's flip these upside down so we can see a little better what we're doing here. So I just have a plant tray. Now you could grab one with holes in it. Sometimes I have some that leak that are out in my greenhouse, so sometimes I'll grab those and use those. But really, you're not going to have a lot of moisture in here anyways, so as long as you're not going overboard with any extra watering that you're going to do, it really doesn't matter if it has holes or not. You just need something that's going to hold the soil and hold the ranunculus or anemone corms for a month or so. So then we're just going to grab our soil. Oh, and I need to moisten mine. So let me actually move this for a minute. I just added. So you could use potting mix, seed starting mix. I just have what's called a grower's mix, which is just peat moss basically with some amendments to bring down the pH and help with drainage a little bit. So I'm just going to break up some of the clumps that are in it. And I'll add just a little bit of water. We just want to have it just damp, which peat moss takes up quite a bit of water. So it'll look like I put a lot in there, but it's really not going to make it that insanely wet. Mix it around a little bit. So we just want to have a dampness to it. So I'm just going to mix this around and I'll let you know what I'm going to do after that. Okay, so I have it nice and damp. You can see it's like there's absolutely zero moisture to squeeze out. It is kind of holding shape, but it's not even really, like I have to really squeeze to get it to hold together even that much. And so it's just barely damp, and that's all we really want at this point. We want it to have some dampness that's not going to pull the moisture out of the corms when we put them in, but we're not looking to get them rotting from being too wet. So now we'll get this tray up here, and I'm just going to put a thin layer of this peat moss across the bottom of this tray. And we only need a few centimeters, an inch, just a little bit, just to have something basically for them to sit on. So that's all it's going to be like, is just a couple of trays with just a little bit of this peat moss. You could use, like I said, soil, potting soil, soilless mix, seed starting mix. You could probably use vermiculite, though it's pretty expensive. But that's all I'm going to do. I am guessing I'm probably going to need 3 trays, 2 for the anemones and 1 for the ranunculus. So I'm just going to get those prepped right now while the corms are soaking. And then I'll just be doing some other things. And like I said, just giving the corms a little stir once in a while. And once the 3 to 4 hours is up, I'll bring you back and I'll show you what the next steps are with all of this. So we'll see you fairly quickly on the video, but It'll be a few hours for me. Okay, so we've let these soak for a while, and hopefully you can see how much larger and plumper they are. It's a completely different looking little thing now here. And I did go through while the ranunculus was soaking, and I tried to separate as many of them as I could. This one still has another little one on it, but it just doesn't want to separate easily, and I don't want to wind up breaking it because you want to keep that top growth point and all those little kind of legs coming off of it. You know, the stem, all that. You don't want to break that off, so I'll just leave it. Now this is an old piece of stem here that's going to wind up with rot, so I'm just going to pull that out. And I also freshened the water when I did that, so it's a little clearer so we can see what's going on. Here's another one that has, you know, there's some growing here and some growing sideways off of here, so they could probably be separated. You kind of see when the like kind of legs are going in different directions, but it just doesn't want to come apart, and I'm not going to force it. It'll just be more stems and blooms coming off of that one later. And there's lots in there anyways. And then the anemones are looking good. They don't, like, they never really look a whole lot different, I guess, but again, I'm just kind of pulling off any stem bits. I did pull a couple out earlier that are just like squishy and falling apart, so those are obviously no good. We don't want that in there, just causing more chances for rot. And it looks like I stuck one of my tags in the wrong place, so luckily these two things look different. So again, I'm just going to look through. Now that they're a little cleaner, I can pull off bits of stem and things that don't belong. So we have less things looking for rot. This one's a little bit squidgy too. You can just see it's just kind of twisty, turvy, and I can just squish it right down. So take that out. This one's might just be a clump of dirt there. I think the rest are pretty good. Oh, that's a little squishy bit as I say that. I don't feel anything else that seems rotten, so I think we're good to go with both of these now. So I'm just gonna move them out of the way a little bit, and we'll bring our tray in that we're gonna put them on. Set those there. And then I've prepared these 3 trays, and they're sitting here with their just barely damp peat moss in them. And again, just about an inch or a couple of centimeters. And then you're just going to take each of these little corms and just set them, just kind of nudge them onto the soil there with the little kind of legs pointing down. And they can be really close. You don't want them touching, but otherwise you can have them as close as you can get them. That one there? No. So it's 2, 4, 6 right there. So you can fit quite a few in. And I'm just going to go through and continue to just place them on here. And then I'll show you the next step. Okay, so I managed to get all of the ranunculus into this one tray. I thought I might need a second tray, but they all fit in here, and if I counted correctly, I should have 81 in here. So now I'm just gonna go and just put a little bit of the same peat moss mix that's just a little bit damp over top, just enough to cover them. So again, like maybe another ½ an inch, centimeter or so of a covering, just so that they are buried under here. So this is just the pre-sprouting. So this isn't the official planting of them yet. This is just to kind of get them woken up and ready to be potted up. So that's the ranunculus, I'm going to do the exact same thing with the anemone, and then we'll go on to the next step. So like I said, it's the exact same thing with the anemone, and they're a little harder to know where the top and bottom is. Usually there's kind of a concave side that actually goes up and a flatter side that goes down. If you're not sure, just kind of poke it in there. It'll eventually tell you. Now some of these are a little bit squishy, so we'll see how they do. And I'm just going to stick them down. And they're like all sorts of crazy shapes, anemones. So like I said, it can be difficult to know what weighs what, but we're going to bury them in soil, so they'll tell us. They'll tell us what they need. That's just soil again. So I probably could have gotten away with a much smaller tray, but I filled this one up, so I'm going to go with it. And I forgot to count these. So 22. So I actually only have like half a tray. Do I want to get something smaller for them? Seems like that would be the smart thing to do instead of wasting this whole tray. Let me see what I have. I'm going to stick them in this meat tray here. So let me just load it up. I think I can get them all in here. So same thing, I'm just putting an inch or so of soil in here. Not sure why I thought I needed such a big tray. Now the trick is going to be to make sure I get them all out of here. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now they won't all fit in this tray. Eleven, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I'm kind of playing Tetris here to try and fit them all in. 19, 20. Why do I have 22 now when I thought I had 21 before? 21. Must be spot for another one in here. 22. Is that all of them? Yeah. Okay, so we'll go with this. Hopefully none of them are too close together there. And then again, just a sprinkling over top. Now they might need, some of them are a little bit taller, so they might need just a hair more just to get them covered than the anemone did, but I'm sorry, than the ranunculus did. But they're harder to see too. They're kind of the color of dirt. All right, so they're all in there. I just want to get this tag up a little bit. So get this out of the way. So now that I have both of these trays ready to rock and roll here, all I'm going to do with them is take them and set them somewhere where it's nice and cool, like around 4 to 10 degrees Celsius, and they'll start to form roots, little rootlets on the edges of the corms that we planted here. So you need to go through, it'll probably take a few weeks, sometimes it can even take close to a month to get anything to happen, but you need to go through every couple of days and just kind of dig around and make sure you don't have anything that's getting moldy or rotten in here. And also look for those little rootlets. Now you don't need to pull every single one up, but just kind of pay attention, give a little, you know, is there anything that's feeling really squishy or gross, or if you can smell anything or see mold on top, then it's time to dig down further and investigate. And you do want to stick your finger underneath and just kind of lift one out, have a look, see if there's any roots on it, and then cover it back up. And just do that with a few throughout the tray, just to get an idea of what's going on there under the soil. And then once they start to form roots, you can take them at that point and pot them up into like a 4-inch pot or something, a little larger. I don't know if I have any on hand here. Yeah, like this is the size I like to put them in, so you can see that there. That would be what I would put them in after that. And you bury them down, I think it's something like a couple of inches. Just bury them down. I usually just kind of go down to about my second knuckle, and they'll start to sprout leaves and grow for you. And then you want to bring them in somewhere you can go a little bit warmer at that point. I usually don't like to get them too warm because they can go outside before your average last frost when you're still getting light frosts, but not hard frosts. You could be planting them outside. So I often will take them at that point once I've got them potted up, put them in my greenhouse with maybe just a frost blanket over them, or try and keep them somewhere where it's like maybe even 15 Celsius, but you need nice bright light at that point because you want them to start getting their shoots and leaves going and growing a plant out the top. So that's the goal with these after that. So for the next few weeks to a month, they're just going to be in 4 to 10 degrees Celsius temperatures. They don't need any light or anything at that point. And you just need to be checking on them every couple of days just to make sure they're not rotten, and check for roots. And then when they start to get rooting, that's when you would pot them up into larger pots and start treating them like a plant with bright lights and a little bit warmer temperatures. But like I said, I don't like to get too warm if I can help it, depending on what the weather's doing outside, because I want to be able to keep them somewhat conditioned for the cool weather if I'm going to be putting them out early. But they really are fairly easy to grow. You might lose a few in this process, but usually as long as you don't get this soil too wet, most of them will come through for you. If it starts to dry out, and that is something you need to check on, then you can just take like a spray bottle or something and just kind of mist over the top a little bit just to bring some more dampness in. They will continue to swell up and grow in this time. So you might see a little bit of change in their size when you dig them out. But you just don't want to have them in like pooling water, especially if you're using trays like I am that are non-draining. So let me know if you've tried anemone and ranunculus before, and what you thought of it and how it worked out for you. I'd love to know in the comments down below. It's always fun to grow these things that maybe are a little bit more of a challenge, but still not too difficult to do. I'll be keeping you up to date on how they go. And I have lots more to grow and do out in the yard and the garden and in my grow room. So keep watching, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye. This shelf in my garage is exactly where these will stay for the next while. It's 11 degrees in my garage, and down on the low part here is a perfect spot. There's no mice or rodents in here, so it's a great spot to keep them while they get their roots.